A few. A few. Let's get into it. A few good movies. A few. A good. A few. Good. A few. Let's get into it. A few good movies.
Your first kiss, your first job, your first life decision. Movies have talked at length about these life events, and oftentimes they're embarrassingly funny. The moments in your life that make you feel nervous and excited and, well, awkward. But we've all been there, right? This is A Few Good Movies with Zach Dame, Chris Porto, and myself, Samer Esma. Today we're talking about coming-of-age comedies, where becoming mature is a real motherfucker. Ooh, by the way, I just got the new iPhone 12 mini, and it is
nice.
like,
Oh,
it is
you
like
should have sprung for the Pro Max, man, because the video
way,
quality on
man.
that is dope.
I don't even care. The mini is like it like, especially because I'm watching all these coming of age movies. It really is like a flashback to when I had my favorite phone ever, which was the iPhone 3GS.
Oh,
it's like,
just because of the
I think
size?
I think it's a little bit bigger than that, but I can hold it like with one hand and like I can like here it is. Like I can do this to it. Like I couldn't do that with a phone for years.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
hey, maybe we can have a sponsored video.
Yeah.
iPhone. Sponsor us, iPhone, please. Well, guys, we've reached the end of season 1. This is it.
This
Episode
is it.
10.
The end of the journey. We've come of age.
We are at the season finale, if you will.
Yep.
Could there be twists and turns? Perhaps a cliffhanger. Remember, honestly, I feel like cliffhangers in television shows at the ends of seasons used to be really popular. You don't
Always.
see many cliffhangers anymore.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe you're
How
right.
frustrating is it to be watching a season week by week and then you hit the season finale and it's a cliffhanger and you know you're not going to get the next one until the fall.
Right.
And
Excruciating.
another thing, I was thinking about all the things that are really just going to go away with television shows or that have gone away. Episodes used to follow the season that it was playing in. Like you knew you'd be airing in the fall and then you'd have like off time in like Christmas time area, and then you come back in the spring. They would just plan for like a Halloween episode and they'd plan for like a Christmas episode. But because everything's streaming now and there's really no set schedule, that's all kind of gone. You don't really have that anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, welcome to the season finale of A Few Good Movies.
Episode 10.
Episode 10. I am Zach Dame, and with me is Chris Porto.
Good day.
And Sam Resmail.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So, today's topic was chosen by Sammer, so I'll let him introduce it.
So, I chose coming-of-age comedies, and they speak to me more than most genres do. Like, these are the moments where I'm like, oh, I remember having that feeling as a teenager, and then having it again in my 20s, and I still think I'm having it, like, I will have it again in my 30s and maybe in my 40s. I don't know when it actually stops, but this kind of idea of like reinventing yourself and learning about yourself and realizing, oh, I have like a
more
whole,
to come.
I have like a whole world of consequences ahead of me. And
I like how consequences and not possibilities.
Well,
Repercussions.
well, now you understand my upbringing. But yeah, you're right. It should be opportunities and possibilities. But I think of them as consequences.
Well, I do appreciate you picking this topic because they're feel-good movies, and I, for one, welcome some feel-good vibes these days.
I think it's a great pick for our finale because this podcast is coming of age, and we're turning into the second season, or the second season. We're having some off season, so we've completed a whole season of a show, and we are more consequences coming up.
Yes, I'm sure we will be.
Yeah,
We're reaping the benefits
when the lawsuits start rolling in.
But let me ask you guys a question because, I mean, and this might be a hard one. I should have prepped you guys for it. But
Okay.
do you can you pinpoint a day or a moment in life where you were like, oh, I'm an adult now? Do you remember? And I think a lot of people will say when they lost their virginity or when they got to college. Is there any? Do you guys have any interesting stories behind any of those? You don't have to tell us when
Chris?
you lost your virginity. That's a little too personal.
I mean, I would definitely say college, like going to college. There were many experiences that I had those sort of moments, those revelations of,
Yeah.
I don't know, growing up, being older. I don't think I have any. I can't think of a specific memory.
Getting married,
But
did
there
that
were some
change
good ones.
much?
I got married kind of older, so I don't know.
It's still
I
like,
think if I was like 21 and got married, it'd feel a little bit
oh,
different.
I guess you're right.
I definitely felt a moment of things changing when I moved to LA because it was such a drastic change. Like, I mean, I didn't know anybody out here, and I didn't know anything about the city at all. So it was a complete start over. And I even remember being on like those early flights coming from Chicago to LA, having that feeling of like, wow, this is a big change.
Yeah.
Just
that
crushing
for me, I
anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chris answers, I probably still haven't come of age. I didn't have that sort of college experience that Zach had. I went to Columbia for a couple years in Chicago, but I commuted. And I guess I did go to Butler a lot to visit Zach. So I sort of,
Yeah, you had some good
by
college memories
association,
there.
had some of those experiences. But, you
Yeah,
like
you got some good times.
watching Sammer's picks is like, I can't even relate to these guys because
I don't think most people can, honestly.
yeah, I've never had those kinds of experiences. But I don't know, just like the reality of having to work to pay bills.
Yeah.
And, up until high school, through high school, even, I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. And then, I got married at 25 and I bought a townhome. And, that's kind of where reality sets in. And then
I'd
also
say getting a mortgage really does.
yeah, getting a mortgage for sure. And just the things you take for granted when you're younger. Like, I'm sure everyone can relate to their parents, yelling at them about paying the bills and whatnot. But then, eventually
Sure.
you're going to have to do that.
And budget accordingly and stuff.
Yeah. And
it
I'm
is
still,
right.
I'm awful with money. I'm terrible with money. But, and then getting divorced, over a year ago is kind of another reality check. I guess in a way it's happened a few times to me.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. Like, it does. I feel like it will keep happening to all of us. A buddy of mine had a birthday party, well, a small get together because of COVID. But I was talking to his dad, and I'm like, and he was telling me all these stories of when he was younger, and like they would drink and party, and like just talking to him, it's like I would never have guessed that you were a partier because he's such an old guy. I think you just sort of keep reinventing yourself, and then you become an old man. It's not like I'm choosing to be. It's like, no, you kind of evolve into that.
One weird thing is I remember as a kid thinking it was so weird that my parents still listened to like 70s music. Like my dad really listened to 70s music a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm now of the age where like 90s music is 70s as far back as 70s was. I do the same thing. Like I'll listen to old stuff.
I mean, we can talk about this when we talk about the movie, but like they go from like a disco bar to a cowboy
I
bar
know.
to a punk show to a theater party. So
Yeah.
they're constantly like flip-flopping and moving around.
I'm out.
So I have another question.
Oh.
Either. Do you think that what era the coming of age movie is in is going to affect the way you appreciate it?
I think so. But like something like Sammer's pick, which is the early 80s.
Yeah.
Right, that's definitely not our time at all.
It's not our time. We were born in the 80s, but we didn't thrive in the 80s.
No.
But it does give you a feeling of nostalgia for like this era you didn't live in.
Right.
I don't know. Like me personally, I would love to have been an adult in the 80s. I listen to 80s music. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Most of my favorite films are from the 80s. Like I can't even imagine seeing some of those when they came out originally.
Yeah.
Because we're just so spoiled now. And then,
Yeah.
the technology wasn't there. So there is more of an incentive to socialize with people and go out
Yeah.
and do stuff. Whereas now
Mhm.
it's so easy to just like put on streaming service or play a
Right.
video game
Or
and
do what we're doing.
Yeah.
it's like, or do a podcast, and you do get that fix. But like watching that movie, especially now when everyone's quarantined and whatnot, there was a time when people like grouped together and went out and had fun, and
Yeah.
and I mean we did stuff like that in high school too, but
Mhm.
Well,
not to that extent.
I feel like bars are different back in the day, because now
Yeah.
going out to a bar, even
They
when
could
I
drink at 18.
like a drink younger, but also like going out to a bar now with friends, it just seems like I'm just hanging out with friends at a bar. They seem to like talk to people, meet people. You know, everybody knows
Yeah.
each other in some way. Like Cheers is like I'm like, I wonder if this how much fantasy this is, or like is a bar like Cheers, is that real?
Yeah.
Yeah,
People
it's
definitely
like-
seem to have better social skills
Yeah.
in the 80s. They could just talk to people and not freak out.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been an adult in the 90s, especially in LA, because I liked that era of filmmakers that were coming up in the 90s. I think it was like a really fun time to live in.
Oh, there's some treacherous territories in every decade. I'm thinking, because I was going to say the 70s and maybe even the 60s, just because
Mhm.
movies and music were peak at that point. I feel like some of the
Mhm.
greatest bands, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, like they're all from the 60s, 70s era. Now, I guarantee you a lot of people wouldn't be accepted, and that it would be awesome to live in those eras if I
Mhm.
were wealthy,
Yeah.
but honestly, I think this might be the best age for
Perhaps
or
you're
this-
living in the best time.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think that with that said, like you could pick any decade and there's bad
probably,
things
yeah.
about it. All right, well, Sammer is up first.
So I picked Richard Linklater's "Everybody Wants Some."
Only been at college an hour and I'm already pulling in the groupies, man. That's a joke. Okay, joke right here. Did he just call his dick a joke?
Stars Blake Jenner, who we previously did a movie with him, American Animals, another one I picked.
Oh.
Yeah.
And Glenn Powell and Zoe Deutsch.
She's really good in this, and I
She's
think
great.
I think this was sort of her breakout role. She didn't do much before this.
Yeah, I
Right?
think she was more of like a TV show, like little guest spots and stuff.
Right,
And
an
this
episode
was, like,
here or there.
Yeah, now she's like in The Politician. She did a great movie I liked called Flower, and she's
Mhm.
the daughter of Leah Thompson, who I had a crush on when I was a kid. But so anyway, this movie is about Blake
Yeah.
Jenner, who plays Jake, just goes into college, like his dorm, where he's a baseball player, and he's living with a bunch of other baseball players on the team. And it's just like their week before college. So he's like meeting everyone, and he's a pitcher, and he's meeting a bunch of characters who hate pitchers or who are great batters, who are overly competitive, who are stoners. It is just like a hodgepodge of random characters that have to live with each other and be on a baseball team.
There's so many characters, and
Yeah.
I was just impressed with how well drawn they all were, and like keeping track of them all. That's a Linklater thing. He's got
For
a lot
sure.
of characters.
There are a lot of standouts too, so they don't kind of
Yeah.
blend together.
And again, this is a movie, so I'm taking it with a grain of salt. But like even with my group of friends, there's not really like characters. Like we have one friend who is like not a Trump supporter, but like a Trump apologist. And to me, that's like, oh, that guy's a character. That guy's weird. It's insane. So basically, you're following this group of people around town, and they're just like, trying to get laid. They meet some girls, one being Zoe Deutsch, and they do this weird stalker thing where they're like following her up to her dorm room and reading the number on her dorm room so they can slip her a note later, which I guess is creepy and thoughtful at the same time.
It just seems not that abnormal in the world of this movie, because
Yeah.
people are doing a lot of very like forward things to meet people in this movie.
I don't think it's unlike finding someone on Facebook or Instagram, now that I think about it.
No, yeah. Is it any less socially
Yeah.
acceptable.
80s equivalent of a direct message.
Yeah.
Slide into those
Exactly,
DMs.
yeah.
Tape it to their door.
Yeah.
I love that one guy's favorite pickup line is talking about his average dick.
Yeah, so that, and this is what like it reminds me of all these little things that I used to be like, oh, that's what I would try to do to impress women, and none of it was like, oh, why don't you just talk to them like a normal human being? And the whole story is like he talks about his average dick, and the girls are laughing because he thinks he's joking, and they're all like just being playful about his dick. They're all thinking about his dick, and that's the jumping off point.
It's like a psychology thing.
Deception.
Yeah. And it's like that's kind of throughout the whole movie, because for being baseball players, you would think they'd just be dumb meatheads, but they're all philosophical in a way.
Some are meatheads, some are more philosophical.
Yeah, that was my initial problem with this movie, because I didn't really know what it was about, except that it was sort of a spiritual successor to Dazed and Confused.
Right, exactly.
Which I really like.
Yeah.
And, you know, as soon as the movie started, I'm like, uh-oh. They're all baseball players. This is not something I'm into at all. Is this going to be like a sports movie? It did take a while for me to warm up to it, but I think right around the time where Blake Jenner's character meets his old teammate who's turned into a punk, it sort of clicked with me, and I'm like, okay, I see what's
far
happening
along in
here.
the way in the movie, though. That's like
an hour in. But, you know, up until that point, it was like bros being bros, and
kind of
a lot of baseball talk. They have that line where he says, you know, when we're playing baseball, you're talking about women, and when we're talking to women, or
talking about
when
baseball.
we're with women, you're talking about baseball, which I thought was hilarious.
My favorite character is
Wyatt Russell.
Yeah.
Wyatt Russell. Yes.
Willoughby.
I like Wyatt Russell in this movie.
Yeah,
I think he's
me
great.
too. I've always kind of thought he was mediocre actor.
Oh,
But,
wow.
Okay.
There's a movie called Overlord that he's in. He's really good in it. It's like a Nazi zombie horror movie. I haven't given him enough credit, and I'm just sort of seeing it now.
Yeah, no, I liked him in this, and like that character was almost like representing the nostalgia to like want to go back to those glory days,
Literally,
you know, those coming of age moments. He didn't want to let it go.
Yeah,
right? I mean, they pretty much say that in the movie. Like, he's not a bad guy. He just, you know, he didn't want to like stop playing baseball.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like somebody watching the movie, you're probably feeling nostalgia for your glory days or your coming of age days.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you're kind of seeing it through his eyes in that moment. And then he gets kicked out. So it's like a reminder you can't go back.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Richard Linklater is great at like, you know, having these little moments, but when he does leave, you know, gives them the handshake. It's almost like when you relieve a pitcher of their duties, you give them the handshake and they go out. So to me, I'm like, oh, that's actually like a baseball moment. If people know baseball, that's like how a pitcher would leave. But it's also like him leaving the team and moving on.
So you had brought up a point before we started, and that is, who is the bad guy of this movie?
Yeah. I don't know if there really is one. I'm thinking of like, if we're comparing it to Dazed and Confused, I guess the bullies are the bad guys in Dazed and Confused, but they're not even that. They're not. I don't think of them as the bad guys of that movie either.
No, they're just a part of the world.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's just and they're kind of just accepted as just a fact of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
They're gonna be bullies, and that's all there is.
Right. I think Richard Linklater does that a lot. I mean, even in Boyhood, I can't really remember a villain, right? Like, there's not really like a bad.
No, there's not really like like an antagonist.
Yeah.
I can't think of any in most of his films.
Yeah.
Like they mostly seem like slice of life stories.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
are. They totally are, and he's really great at it.
He
I
is.
love. By the way, I'm just gonna say it on record that I love Richard Linklater movies. He's a great director, and he probably doesn't get enough credit.
I mean,
he's really good.
He should get more credit if he doesn't. But he does something that I think like is very rare with a lot of directors, is that he has like such a flow to his movies that you'll be watching for an hour and you're just like not thinking about why are they doing this? You're just like watching them because they're so much fun to hang out with.
There's not much of a plot in this movie.
Right.
I mean, and his other movies are even less of a plot. Like Waking Life has no plot really.
Yeah.
Slackers really doesn't have a plot.
The Before trilogy is just like these romantic walks.
Yeah.
But they're awesome. And he is amazing. As I was watching this, I was thinking, like, he is amazing at just making mundane, everyday life seem so interesting. And all of his movies take place, he's like Robert Rodriguez. I'm pretty sure all of his movies take place in Texas. Or at least most of them do.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's cool about him is he's done like a really wide variety of movies. Like he also did Bad News Bears and he also did Bernie.
Scanner Darkly.
Scanner Darkly. Like it's a very
School of
like,
Rock.
School of Rock. Like, yeah, so he's got range. So I think we should ask this question of every of the three of our movies, and that is, so what is the lesson learned?
So in my opinion, it's about searching a place where you fit in. You know, he meets Zoe Deutsch and they go on that date and they talk about Sisyphus.
There you go.
And
that boulder up the hill.
Yeah, and you just see him become more and more of a fleshed out character and a fleshed out person. And that's like what happens when you grow up, is that you become less one dimensional and you become more like an onion, like in Shrek.
You'd think that the message would be something about like coming of age, learning to be more of a grown up or what have you. And then he goes to his first class and falls asleep immediately. Yeah. And that's the last image we see.
So this is why my theory about this movie, and even in Dazed and Confused, is that they're not like accurate depictions of college during this time. They're just like a loving portrait of it. You know, Aaron Sorkin, if you guys have seen the new Chicago trial of the trials of the Chicago 7, Aaron Sorkin.
Oh, no, I want to see that.
It's pretty good, but he talks about it as like, this isn't an accurate depiction of what the trials and the protests were like. This is a portrait of what it felt like in the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Linklater does with his movies. So that when he falls asleep, I'm like, oh, he's like, this is him kind of dreaming of this world.
But that's a really good point. It is like, it's just more of like capturing the feeling, which everyone can relate to, even if you didn't live in Texas.
I also just want to say, like, I've always been fascinated with pictures, and I love how like weird some of the pictures are in this movie. Just, you know, if you ever read about, like, there was a pitcher in the 80s, I can't remember his name now, but he just did a bunch of drugs and he pitched a perfect game on acid. Or no hitter on acid. So they've always been like these crazy characters.
All right, well I'm going next, and I picked Napoleon Dynamite.
Can you bring me my chapstick?
No, Napoleon.
But my lips hurt real bad.
Just borrow some from the school nurse. I know she has like 5 sticks in her drawer.
I'm not gonna use hers, you sicko.
This is Jared Hess's directorial feature debut. It came out in 2004. Rewatching it now, it was wildly popular when it came out. I remember it was like endlessly quotable. Watching it now, like 16 years later, I definitely got the sense, I don't know about you guys, the comedy was very specific for the time. Like, Sammer, you ordered it as like you had to be there.
Yeah. That's my theory about this movie.
I kind of agree with you. I mean,
Absolutely.
Chris, what did you think watching it again?
I mean, if you remember when this came out, our friend Mike and his dad like saw this multiple times in theaters and loved it.
Yeah, they loved it. Yeah.
And I refused to go see it. I thought it looked very stupid. And I didn't see this until it came out on DVD, and I bought it, watched it
at your house. Yeah.
And I don't remember liking it really or getting it. And watching it now, I sort of felt the same exact way. It's a specific kind of comedy that I think is for a specific person. I don't know what that person is. I wouldn't say any of it's like cleverly written or anything.
Right.
There's some funny stuff in it. Mostly it's just weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, that was definitely the era of uncomfortable comedy. And I was mentioning that like a little bit before that was Tom Green, which was also super uncomfortable comedy. Yeah. If you watch Tom Green now also, I don't think it like hits the same way it used to. And if you show somebody that didn't grow up in that era either Napoleon Dynamite or Tom Green now, they'd probably just be really weirded out by it.
I just think, so Jared Hess did, after this, I think he did Nacho Libre. I think that's a much better film. I think Gentlemen Broncos is really funny, mostly because of Jermaine Clement.
Yes. Yeah. But this movie, does check a lot of boxes for my personal taste, because like, first of all, it's a director's first movie.
Very indie.
Which I love that whole vibe. I love the indie vibe, and I like seeing like directors who successful directors in their earlier works. And I do feel like that's sort of them at their like rawest and maybe most true version of themselves. So I like that about it, and it was very low budget and all that. I like seeing movies that are made on a tight budget and can still be really effective. And clearly this was made for like, budget was $400,000.
Wow.
And it grossed $44.5 million domestically.
Yeah. Wow.
So huge, and he filmed it in his own, his hometown basically of Preston, Idaho. So for all those reasons, it really stuck with me as being just like a really impressive accomplishment. The other thing that I like about it is it kind of enforces this idea that I quite like, that everybody has a unique perspective in the world. And if you could just find a way of like honing that perspective, you can make a really effective movie. I mean, this is a guy, he's said that Napoleon Dynamite is based on experiences he had in his own life. Like he grew up Mormon, he went to Brigham Young, which is a Mormon college. He grew up in Idaho, and these experiences, like, I'm sure they were highly exaggerated from his growing up, but there's a lot of truth in what he was seeing. And he found a way to take his own experience, crafted into like a really effective film. And I like that. It really, it gives, you don't have to, it means that like being a director or a filmmaker doesn't require you to be a certain kind of person or live a certain kind of lifestyle. Like you don't have to be a New Yorker, like chain smoking, to be a good filmmaker or be like an intellectual. Like if you have a perspective, and that's what's important, Yeah. So I love that about this film. Similar to Richard Linklater, actually, because like all of his films are kind of a love letter to Texas and his upbringing. Mm-hmm. And he just found a really good way of putting it out to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Napoleon Dynamite, it feels much like Dazed and Confused and Everybody Wants Some. Because it is just like, here's just like a few days of this person's life. Napoleon Dynamite, it literally just, it drops you in the middle of his life. First of all, I was like under the impression that it was supposed to be present day, but it's such a weird town. But I'm not even sure now. I don't know what era this movie is in.
Thought it was present day, but people that just didn't catch up with present day.
I mean, it's
honestly,
a small town in
like,
Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's 2004.
The cool people seemed a little more current, right? Like
a little bit. Summer,
the blonde guy and Summer,
yeah.
like they danced to I think it's Backstreet Boys song for the finale. Their skit, which is
that's true.
I think pretty on brand for that era, maybe a little old.
I'm not sure if the director has Asperger's, is on the spectrum in any way.
My God.
It definitely feels like
Napoleon
Dynamite has autism, right? Like he's on the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but what about Kip? I mean, he seems to have just as many sort of antisocial behavior.
I mean, almost every character in the movie, right?
Right. And what about Deb? I feel like they all have. When you got Diedrich, is it Diedrich Bader?
Bader, yeah.
That's totally that move where you have a low budget movie and you're like, we got to get a name in this movie.
Yeah.
And who can we afford? And Diedrich Bader's like, I'm game, and I don't know what this movie's about, but I'm going to come in with a character for you to just be a weird Rex Kwon Do.
Even the characters themselves are delusional, Like Kip, for instance, this whole time he's talking about the love of his life, La Fonda. The whole time, I don't know about you guys, the whole time I was like, okay, this guy just met some random person that's catfishing him on the internet. Then you meet her, and it's like, he dresses him up as like a gangster.
Yeah.
And it's like, these people are all delusional.
What you're describing is funny. I don't know what you're.
No, I know.
With this movie.
That's why I'm saying, like, if you were to explain that, and that's why I feel like this might be the most interesting movie we can talk about, because when we analyze it, it makes zero sense. But watching it, you're like, oh, I get it. This is just a weird world.
That whole thing with Jared Hess and his growing up in Idaho or whatever as a Mormon, it's got to be that sensibility. and
Yeah.
maybe where he grew up. It would be like if me and Zach were to make a Northwest Indiana film.
Right.
You know, like
About
most
going to a
people
Catholic
probably wouldn't
school.
understand it. To me, this movie reminds me of like a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
But,
Or Freaks and
But
Geeks
set,
is what I
but
always
set
thought
in
of.
Idaho.
There was one
But-
scene where, just real quick, Napoleon was like, I can't remember what he did before, but he's like at home, and then it cuts to him getting slammed into a locker at school.
That's great.
And then
That's
it just
amazing.
and then it just cuts to him talking to Pedro in a class. And I'm like, that
here's the
is
thing.
only there to show like he's not at home anymore. He's at school.
I loved how like in the middle of the scene they would just cut to the next thing. Like whatever they're talking about, they just cut to it. Like one of my favorite ones is like the whole like jumping off the ramp
Yeah.
on the bike. They're having the conversation and then they're just standing in front of his bike. And then next thing you're just like seeing him wiping out on the bike. Those are fun. I like those because those are like editing punchlines.
Yeah, you're right. This seems like a movie that is fun to make and fun to watch if you're into that.
People
I think
still quote this movie and they don't even know what they're quoting
Yeah.
anymore. Like,
Yeah, I think
like
you're right.
Your mom goes to college. That's classic.
I still call it quesadilla occasionally.
Quesadilla. Make
Yeah.
yourself a dang. Tina, come get your dinner.
Yeah, with the llamas.
it's just another quirky thing to be in there.
Yeah.
Like, was it their pet? Was it for shearing? I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly the grandma likes it because she's smooching it at the end.
Yeah.
But I guess I should just talk a little bit about the plot, although I'm sure most people have
Okay.
seen it.
There's
because
no plot.
There is a plot. It's actually just it's a simple plot, but there is a plot. There's maybe as much plot as everybody wants some.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that they're both slice of life, but I think in Everybody Wants Some, we're following this guy's first week into college. So the story is, this was my life first week before college. Like, this is me.
Mhm.
With Napoleon Dynamite, why does this happen now? Like, why is this story happening? Why are you telling this story that's right now? And you need that, like, jumping off moment. The apocalypse is happening, blah, blah, blah. Or zombies are invading us. That's why we're telling this story. So what is it in Napoleon Dynamite?
There's that scene early on where he goes to the Rex Kwon Do free trial course class.
Yeah.
Rex Kwon Do is like something to aspire to. Like he's like a cool, successful person. And I think that Napoleon just buys into that he's a cool, successful person. He specifically says there are 3 things that you need. 1 is to have a best friend to have your back. 2, having a girl or a partner that shows how much self-respect you have. I can't remember quite how he words it. And then 3 is like cultivating your image. Everything he does after that is to attain those 3 goals.
Right.
Like he takes that to heart. He tries to get a best friend with Pedro. He tries to find a girlfriend with Deb. He eventually tries to change his persona when he's like learning the dance number and like going up on stage and doing this.
The greatest scene in the movie is the dance.
Right.
Scene.
The whole, the dance scene is, and that's him kind of cultivating a new persona, you know?
Yeah.
So the movie is like simply him trying to attain those 3 goals in like as easy of a fashion as he can. By the end, he has achieved those 3 goals.
He never, like, I'm not sure if he ever acknowledges him as like, oh, he's the genius in all this. Like, he knows exactly. I think he just goes because Kip is going for a free trial, right?
Right. Yeah. He wasn't supposed to go, but
So there's never
really
a
think that
moment where
scene-
he's like, oh, this is my coming of age moment. I'm going to change my life because of this. It just happens in the movie. Like, I guess the hard part about Napoleon Dynamite is that you never like can get a sense of who he is, right? You just know he's a weird person. This is why I loved it, is that high school is a weird time. I remember feeling weird all the time in high school. So to me, I'm like, I get like this feeling, maybe not as weird as him, but I get like that's kind of how it felt to me sometimes. And I think think that's why Napoleon Dynamite blew up, because people were quoting it left and right when I was in high school.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of what the coming of age lesson was, it seems to me at the end of the movie, all of the characters have come to terms with what their place is in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You have Kip getting on a bus with LaFonda. Yeah. I mean, and you have Pedro like celebrating his like presidency. Like everyone is finally like at this happy place of like knowing where they fit into the world.
Yeah.
Right. Like Napoleon is with Deb. Even the grandma is with the llama. Oh, not to mention just randomly that Uncle Rico ends up. I assume that girl that bikes up to him at the end is his ex.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
I think
Oh.
like even he is coming to terms with like where he is and like his place in the world. So I think that's the message, is just coming to terms with your place in the world or discovering your place in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And letting your freak flag fly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about Napoleon. He never like, there's no sort of internal conflict with him. It is
No.
like what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And he's not like, oh man, I wish I were more popular. Or
Right.
so like, how can I change myself to be popular? Which, you know, most people are probably thinking in high school.
Right.
He's just like, I'm going to do what I do. And if people are either going to accept it or they're not. And then, you know, by the end of the movie, he's found people that have accepted it. So,
That is
Yeah.
a pretty refreshing viewpoint, especially
yeah.
for a high school story.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
Yeah, he's always himself. Like,
Like-
the very first scene is him giving a report on Nessie,
I'm
current event.
yeah. I'm not going to like defend this movie too hard, but you know, it is refreshing to see that. And even like the quote unquote bully of the movie, he's not even that much of a bully. And there's that scene towards the end where Napoleon asks him for one of the buttons from Summer.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're having like a moment where they're cool with each other, and Napoleon just chucks it down the hallway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
But, like-
he doesn't even, it's funny because he doesn't even get a response from the bully. He's just like,
Right,
"Ah,
yeah, he doesn't
all
get a
right."
response. The bully's just like, you know, that's how Napoleon is, and we're gonna
Yeah.
move on with our lives. I mean, the opening scene where Napoleon has that action figure and he just throws it out the bus window and it's dragging.
Yeah, right.
no,
You know
like-
what you're getting at that point.
Yeah, if you're not in at that point, you might as well
Yeah.
leave.
I did really like this section where Pedro's running for president and Napoleon starts going around saying like, Pedro offers you his protection. And
Yeah.
his cousins roll up and are just like shaking their head. No,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
steal that kid's bike. That was great.
So I want to ask you guys something. Did you stay until the end of the credits?
Of course.
Okay, so you saw the wedding scene?
Yeah.
No, I did
All right.
not.
Oh,
That's my
man,
favorite
I
scene in the
knew that was
movie.
coming.
Oh. What happened?
Why?
Wait, so who gets what? Who gets
I don't know.
married?
I just think it's hilarious. It's Kip gets married to LaFonda.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
then
Napoleon shows up on a stallion.
Yeah, a wild stallion that he tamed. He
Yeah, I
rides
tamed you
up
this
on.
wild stallion.
That's like the only scene in the movie that seemed like it would be in a normal comedy.
Yeah, and then the very last line as they're riding off together, Kip and LaFonda, is a close-up of Napoleon just going, "Lucky!" And then it
Yeah.
cuts. And that's it. I actually watched this movie on DVD. It's a rare instance that I own the DVD.
Mm.
I haven't put on a DVD in a long time, and it was almost confusing to me because the disc had two sides on one disc, and one side said full screen and then reverse widescreen, and I'm like,
Right.
What the fuck is this shit?
Why is this a fucking option? And so
Full screen is just stretching things out, and it might even like change the edit sometimes,
Or
right?
cropping.
I think it's pan and scan.
Yeah.
Well, it's two different things. It could be either they crop it and zoom it, or pan and scan is where you watch that awful, and it has that effect where it like moves unnaturally.
No, those
Yeah.
are. I think those are one and the same because when you crop it in to be the whole thing, you're cutting off things in the left and right. And if there's important information,
Then they
an
pan
editor
it.
but
they have to make a
Yeah.
decision to like pan it
But
left to right.
Yeah, it creates this unnatural camera move that doesn't
Right.
exist.
Right, in order to get all the important information
Yeah.
in the
But
frame.
not-
it's
not
a
like-
ridiculous thing.
Not all things do that if they're full screen.
The Simpsons had this reverse issue, right? Because they were full screen, and bringing it to 16:9 now is
On Disney Plus, right? There was like
on
an
Disney Plus. So
outrage
they
over
would
it.
cut gags out. So there was like one particular gag where it's like they're at a Duff brewery, and it's like Duff Light, Duff regular, Duff like genuine or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's just 3 pipes that are supposed to be connected, but they cut the top part.
Oh,
So it just looks like
Even-
3 different
yeah.
pipes.
The joke is that they're all coming from the same thing.
Yeah.
But you can't
And
see
that's-
it. Yeah.
That's because they did the thing where they blew it up and
Right.
Yeah.
stretched it out so
Yeah.
it would get 16:9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dumb.
Anyway.
Speech over. Well, I think it's time for our third movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
Third and last.
All right. The last, guys, this is the last
Oh my
movie
God.
of the season.
So much pressure.
Wait, just
We
real
made it.
quick. If you did like Napoleon Dynamite, you should watch Pen 15 because I feel like those are similar senses of humor.
I agree.
Okay, so I did the 1995 comedy Clueless.
I don't know why Tion's going out with a high school boy. They're like dogs. You have to clean them and feed them, and they're just like these nervous creatures that jump and slobber all over you. Ew! Get off of me! Ugh, as if!
It's written and directed by Amy Heckerling, sort of based on Jane Austen's Emma. This movie came out in 95. I remember seeing this in theaters. I was only 11 years old. I think a lot of these jokes probably went over my head.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you really relate to a high school movie like that when you're 11 years old?
I probably didn't know what was going on. But, you know, so the movie's about a sort of rich Beverly Hills high school student. Her name is Cher. She's played by Alicia Silverstone. She's sort of ditzy, but also kind of intelligent. And I think that goes for a lot of the characters in the movie.
Yeah.
It sort of embraces this kind of, I don't know, if it's not necessarily Valley Girl speech, but they have their own.
It totally is.
Is
Yeah, I
it?
was
They're
gonna
not really
I
in the
think
Valley.
I think that's. They're not living in the valley, which is like a weird misnomer, but I'm pretty sure that is the definition of like Valley Girl
Yeah.
speak, like as if and
They-
stuff.
Yeah,
as if whatever.
It, to me, is Valley Girl.
So Alicia Silverstone plays Cher. She's sort of a self-proclaimed matchmaker, and you know, one of her things is she's trying to match up 2 of her teachers to get her grades to go up a little bit. The main crux of the story is that a new student comes to the school, and it's played by a very young Brittany Murphy. Rest in
R.I.P.
peace.
Rest in peace.
So Cher takes it upon herself to sort of make over this kind of rough girl, you know, make her into one of her clique. And I don't know, there are cliques at the school, but it just seems like they all kind of get along. This is another movie where there's really not a villain. Essentially, you know, Cher, she's saving herself for the perfect man. It turns out to be her stepbrother, played by the wonderful Paul
Yep.
Rudd.
Sexy Paul Rudd.
Young-
who I
young
really
Paul
love.
Rudd.
Like, I'll admit that right now. I love Paul Rudd.
Vampire Paul Rudd. He kind of got a vampire. He's very not tan in this movie. He kinda
Not
looks like a
tan.
vampire.
Well, he's the cool
very-
college guy.
Hey,
Yeah.
So this movie, what year did this movie come out again?
1995.
Okay, 1995. It is now 2020, and
Yeah.
I don't think he's aged.
No.
Almost certain.
But I mean, even then, and even in this movie, like, he's so damn charming.
He's a bizarre character because he's like, he watches the news or whatever, but then he's just like sitting at home eating Cheetos and like drinking out of the cart. Like, he wants to be a lawyer, but like he's like
Yeah.
he's also like a frat boy.
He listens to the same emo song. I think the same emo song 2 or 3
Radiohead.
times.
Radiohead song.
Yeah.
Radiohead and the
They-
Cranberries. They
The
have that.
Cranberries.
There's a line about like where his Cranberries CD is.
Yeah, they
I
really
love it.
milked that Radiohead song. I mean, that's played like 5 different parts of the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things about all of our movies is there's some great soundtracks in them. Great
Yes, yes.
nostalgic
Yeah.
cuts. It's a fun movie. It's been such a long time since I'd seen it. I was kind of like hesitant over whether to pick it, but because
Glad
this
you did.
topic, oh yeah,
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 me
it's a
too.
lot of fun. And like this topic, it was hard for me because I'm not that big on this type of movie. I'm not even that big on comedies in general, but sort of like coming of age stuff. You know, if there's no blood or gore in it, I'm probably not that interested.
God.
See, it would have been interesting if you found one that is very violent. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but
I'm sure they're a thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. If not, then people should make that movie because
Yeah.
that would be gangbusters.
Anyway, I really like the cast in this movie. There's a lot of 90s faces in it, a lot of whom
Sure.
sort of disappeared from the mainstream by now, but growing up in that time period, I can kind of remember seeing a lot of these people in different movies of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, Breckin Meyer, who was the sort of burnout skateboard guy,
Skateboard guy, yeah.
He had a career for a little while there, and
he was lovable in this movie.
Jeremy Sisto, who played Elton, who was kind of like the heartthrob. He was big in like B-movie horror films of the time. He even made that movie with Jeff Goldblum called Hideaway, which was kind of cool.
And then you have
many people have seen that
guy from Scrubs, whose name is escaping me right now.
Yeah.
Donald Faison.
Yeah.
So
Love
great
seeing
cast.
him.
Dan Hedaya is Cher's dad. He's really funny.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting because it's a movie with a lot of like characters, just much like the other two movies we talked about. A lot of little characters that could have their own movie. Like the guy that Cher starts dating. I forget his name, but
are you talking about Christian?
Yeah, Christian.
That guy
who want you to believe that he's gay, but they don't know. Like there was never like that reveal or anything. So it's just like he just tells her like, no, you're dating a gay guy. That's why nothing has happened. That's why you're not having sex with him.
Right.
But then that's it. Like
they don't make a thing out of it. I like the way they did that because they didn't make it like that big of a deal.
It almost feels like something you would shoehorn into a movie, and they didn't, which I think is more interesting that way.
The first half hour is Cher just basically flexing her muscles that she can like manipulate her teachers into falling in love with each other, and then she finds a new person that she can kind of impress upon to make her feel more comfortable at school and to be more fashionista. That doesn't happen until like a half hour into the movie, so you're like, what is the point? And then she meets a guy that is gay, so you're like, oh, maybe that's gonna like flip on it. Like the movie is called Clueless, and you think she's clueless, but she's the one kind of maneuvering everything. And then when you see Ty, you're like, oh, she's the clueless person, and the movie is gonna kind of go through her, but it still doesn't do that.
But in the end, she was clueless.
And
she even says, I'm the clueless one.
So, you know what I kept thinking about when I was watching this movie was this would be a great TV show. And it was a TV show.
It was.
A year later.
And apparently it wasn't great. So I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, I got to say, I've never seen the show.
Yeah.
No.
And I think I want to say almost all the cast is different in the series.
I was going to say about this movie that like it was fun to watch it because it takes place all in LA. It's another example of seeing a movie and seeing all the places not living in LA, you wouldn't know what they were, but like where they're actually filming it. Like apparently the mall they always go to is the West Side Pavilion, which is not
now
that far from here.
Isn't it now Century City, or is that that's different?
No, it's on Pico, like just a little bit away from Century
West Side
City.
Pavilion has that movie theater, the Landmark.
Yes, with the reclining seats and stuff.
It's a great theater.
Bet back then that was the big fashion mall where Beverly Hills people would go. Yeah. Now it's either the Beverly Center or
Century City.
Century City. If you don't live in LA, you don't know what the hell we're talking about. So you're welcome. This movie also strangely made me feel slightly attacked. It's in a weird way. Like I know that it's again not quite our era. Like we were more like graduating early 2000s, and this is more like graduating mid 90s. It's not exactly a positive portrayal of youth in the mid 90s. Like it really does make them seem pretty stupid and vain and shallow.
Yeah. I don't know if that's that might be more their privilege and where they're at more than the era.
Right. Her character is one that is I guess not taking advantage of the situation, but is in a very privileged situation.
100%.
And it's addressed a lot. Like when at one point she is supposed to be highlighting phone calls at a certain date. Mm-hmm. And she separated, I forget what she did, but she separated them into two piles. Yeah. And they got pissed off at her. One of the lawyers got pissed off at her. The other thing is I wanted to say about this movie is that there's a lot of like, there's a lot of 90s references. They talk about, I think she said she has a Twin Peaks moment when
Yes.
when the guy that she's trying to fix with Ty starts kissing her. I guess it's a Twin Peaks moment. Yeah, it is interesting. Like, I would never take. I mean, maybe in the 90s, a lot of people were watching Twin Peaks because it was pretty popular when it first came out.
Yeah,
but I
this
would
was
never.
95. Twin Peaks was already done.
Yeah, but I would never take her as someone who would watch Twin Peaks.
Exactly, that's
and
true.
she
Point.
watches like, they say that she watches Ren and Stimpy, which again to me is like, that's strange. I don't think she would be watching Ren and Stimpy.
I mean,
And
that's the
Beavis and
thing about
Butthead.
her. She's a lot more like intellectual than outward appearances suggest.
But so what I was gonna say was like, there's a lot of 90s stuff, like Chris, you mentioned the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and like having this
Yes.
band play at your prom or whatever.
I love we've talked about it before, that 90s thing.
Yeah,
of
that's a 90s
featuring famous bands in
Yeah.
shows and movies to cross promote the brands.
And there's also this moment where Cher is doing she's doing it. This is like in the beginning of the movie where she's doing her debate speech, and she somehow makes an analogy to catering this party for her dad and like not having enough people not RSVPing properly and blah blah blah. And it's just like this nonsense. And then at the end, everyone cheers and is like, "Yeah, that's awesome." And it reminded me of like Billy Madison at the end where he's talking about industry and the puppy.
I want to ask maybe an obvious question, but elephant in the room, the love story between Cher and the stepbrother. What's his name? Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
She is
His name was
16 years old in the movie, and he is at least like 19 years old, right?
Yeah, he's in college.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just totally not even a problem for anybody in the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
And that's another running 90s thing. I feel there's a lot of movies where older, I mean, we talked about it with Wish Upon a Star, how, the 17-year-old sister was being hit on by like the construction workers constantly, and it wasn't a big deal. And then in this one, you have 16-year-old Cher basically falling in love with her fairly older brother.
I think it was, I think that is something that has just grown out of society. Because I think like, there were celebrities, and you can Google this wherever. There were celebrities in the 90s that were dating women that were teenagers, younger than 18. And even in like Twin Peaks 90s show, what's her name? Not Donna. Is it Donna? Who's like hitting on Agent Cooper a lot?
Oh, Audrey.
Oh, right.
Audrey.
Yeah.
And she's much younger than him.
Right.
He never makes an action, but
He never does it.
yeah, but it seems like that's okay.
It's very acceptable back in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, we've moved past that, I guess.
You have Never Been Kissed a little bit later, where the teacher is like, doesn't realize that Drew Barrymore is an adult. He thinks that she's a high schooler. And then when he finds out that she's actually an adult, he's disappointed. Like, his response is like,
bad.
it's not, now it's weird that you're not a high schooler. Anyway, I just thought, I was doing the math in my head on that one and thinking like, wait, because at first I'm like, oh, she must be a senior, so she's 18. But then at one point she's straight up said she's 16. And I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Even if he's a freshman and he's 18, but
Right.
it's like right after the very last scene at the teacher's wedding is just like they've settled into the groove where he's one of the guys and the girls are on the other side, and like all is well. They don't even acknowledge it.
All right, so what's the lesson learned in this movie? What's the coming of age lesson?
I think it's like the same thing as like Napoleon Dynamite. It's just
Discovering who you are, what your place in the world is.
And just like being true to yourself, because, in the end, Ty did sort of go back to who she was a little bit.
I'm glad she ended up with the stoner skateboarder.
Yeah. And even he like sort of I don't want to say fixed his he went to like the 12-step program, so he's trying to be straight now
for weed though. I mean, that didn't age well either.
I don't know what that's
like,
about.
Marijuana isn't addictive. You don't need
right.
I mean, you might need rehab for other reasons.
Ty was not really being manipulated by Cher, because I think manipulated is kind of a strong word for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But she was kind of
Influenced.
being pushed in a direction where she did like think she liked Elton for no real reason.
Right.
Except he was the dreamboat. When her initial thing was like to be into the stoner guy.
Right.
Who is the cooler one.
For sure.
In my opinion.
I guess that's the theme. I think that of the three movies, like the running theme through all of them is that idea of like finding
I mean,
your place in the world.
I think that's what coming of age literally means, is that you kind of find yourself in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
You evolve, you like change. Yeah. Where do you see those characters in 2020? Like, what do you think they're doing now?
Oh man,
this might be a thinker.
In in all of the movies.
And I mean, you can pick your own movie. You can pick all. We can go through each movie individually. But Bruce Jenner's character probably
he's Uncle Rico now.
He's Uncle Rico now. He probably didn't go to MLB, and he probably is an accountant or something. Although he does like write poems and stuff for his wife, who probably is Zoe Deutsch, his character.
I think Napoleon and Deb get married, and I think that they all keep just doing exactly what they're doing. And
they never left that town.
Idaho. Oh no, definitely
I mean,
not.
yeah, I'm sure you're right about that.
Yeah, that's it. That's what they're doing. Maybe they breed,
I don't know.
They breed ligers, or maybe one of them becomes Tiger King. I don't know.
Oh boy.
I mean, for any of these movies, do we really think like these first loves lasted? I think realistically they don't.
You're probably right, but I don't know.
I think Napoleon Dynamite's a different
dream.
case. Yeah.
Yeah. In Cher's case, it would be weird to break up with Paul Rudd's character at this point, right? Like,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
That would
She
ruin
knew it was
family
good for
dinners.
her. I mean, he's probably a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
And
she'll probably still be shopping, and
yeah,
maybe
he's
she'll
probably,
like go into like a nonprofit and like do some activist stuff.
Maybe they have a few kids, and those kids are in Clueless 2 that's
Yeah.
coming soon.
Oh, I do think that in every movie they stay in their hometown or their home state.
For sure.
Yeah, I think so.
I think they're always going to be in Beverly Hills in Clueless.
Yeah.
And I think most of
they're
those dudes and Everybody Wants Some is going to stay in Texas.
Unless they go to pro ball, which they'll go wherever. But I think they always go back to Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they will. Let's do honorable mentions.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's obviously so many. I think Superbad's probably the obvious choice.
Yeah, that's a great
Which is
choice.
a great movie. I mean, there's no doubt. That's a great coming of age movie.
The one that I was thinking of doing was Frances Ha, which is a unique one because she's an adult in that movie and she's still trying to find herself amongst other adults. You know, if you haven't seen that one, and if you love Greta Gerwig, who also did another great one called Lady Bird.
Yeah, Lady Bird.
That's an amazing movie. Probably one that I should have picked over this one, but
I think Juno's
is
probably a good one. And also the other things that Diablo Cody has written, like isn't Young Adult also her?
Young Adult, yep.
Yeah.
It's funny because I also thought about Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which was also directed by Amy Heckerling.
Yeah.
But it was written by Cameron Crowe, so that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Hughes movies too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anything John Hughes.
Pretty in
Probably
Pink.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's...
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
That
The
movie's
Breakfast
so
Club.
weird.
I feel like The Breakfast Club is like
The Breakfast
classic
Club for
one,
sure.
right?
It's not really a comedy, is it though?
The Breakfast Club?
Yeah.
I think
Is
it's a
it?
comedy.
Kind of.
All right.
The movie I was
I'll
thinking
allow it.
of was called Joshi. Came out in 2016.
Dude, never heard of it. That's
Jeff
crazy.
Baina wrote and directed it. Yeah, Jenny Slate's in it. It's pretty good. It's just like a weekend retreat. Like basically, Thomas Middledish's wife dies, and they have this. They're supposed to have this honeymoon. Maybe no, it's supposed to be a bachelor party, and instead of canceling it, they're like, let's just go bachelor party will make you feel better or whatever. And it's like this whole weekend. And they get drunk and stuff. It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
That's a under the radar pick for everyone out there. All right. Well, that's pretty rounds out a nice honorable mention, I think. For
and
our
if
last
there's more, you guys should
honorable
tell us.
mention of you know what? I think hopefully next season we can have a theme song for honorable mention.
Ooh, yeah.
That'd be nice. Well, I think we should wrap this up, and I think let's just take a moment to appreciate the fact that we've made it through our whole first season.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for joining us on our journey.
Yeah.
On this journey.
Just a little bit of backstory. We had this idea probably April, maybe.
I think April, yeah.
And like we
early
kept
on in the
tweaking
pandemic.
it, yeah. And then we didn't even record our first episode until May.
Yeah.
And then I think we didn't even release that one, right? We're not
Maybe
ever releasing.
you'll
it.
never hear it.
Maybe one day we'll just release it as a bonus.
Yeah, bonus.
The lost episode, our very first recording.
Yeah. And then we,
Cringe.
we finally fine-tuned it, and I think we had something cool.
It's come. I think this has been nearly 9 months of work by the time it's all said and done.
This is a baby. This is our newborn.
It takes a lot more effort than I think I gave it credit for, but it was a lot of fun, and I hope that everyone has enjoyed it. And we do hope to make more, have a season 2, do more, but a lot of that will depend on how this does. So if you've liked it, share it with people, and we'll keep checking the numbers of people that are interested and listening, and also in between seasons, we're trying to think of some fun things, mini things to do just to keep content coming out in a smaller capacity.
Yeah.
So we'll still be around. Just keep checking social media, and we'll keep you updated with our comings and goings, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do more videos, or
hopefully,
smaller bite-sized things that people can watch quickly and entertain you.
And hopefully we'll just keep developing the concept and improving upon it and adding more fun things, more relevant things. Just keep it up. Because you know what? It's fun to have a reason to be able to talk to my good friends on a regular basis. So I don't want to stop doing that. So we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, it is fun to it is fun to just talk movies with you guys. Like,
yeah.
It's
really, this is no different than if we were in person.
That's true.
Right. And it's
remember,
so easy to kind of lose track of. I mean, you get so busy; it's hard to just keep up to date with friends and see people regularly. But this definitely helps keep us, seeing each other.
Yeah. And we want to hear your opinions on movies. Like, I'm always, I want to hear why people like movies and why they think movies that I like are shitty, or why I think movies that I think are shitty they love. So yeah, tell us.
Yeah, we want a conversation. We want to keep talking with other people who have opinions about everything, but basically movies. So yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. We hope you've really enjoyed the season. We really enjoyed doing it, and we will see everyone soon. This has been A Few Good Movies.